I have a special affection for pleasure piers. I can enjoy seeing the sea close up without actually going on its restless surface or in its murky waters. It is really a face-off between me and the sea, and I know that I am making an incursion into its territory. I am surrounded by sturdy railings and a massive iron framework underneath that promises to keep me safe and supported, at least for the duration of my visit. The solid planking deck is pleasant to walk on. The thickness of the timbers and the giant size of the bolts inspiring a goodly amount of confidence. The pier amusements are there to provide a semblance of normality, whilst I am venturing into this alien environment. With sea to the left and right, I feel safe on my narrow island, but the glimpses and splashes of the waves through the gaps between the planks remind me of the real situation. I am suspended over the sea by a structure that is not as permanent as it appears, on iron pillars that the salt water is slowly turning to rust. In strong winds there would be no protection or safety, and I am sure that storm waves would manage to deposit enough wind-blown water to dislodge any walker. I choose my moment for the confrontation very carefully. I am, in this case, a fair-weather friend, and intend to stay so. Pleasure piers began to be built by the Victorians, so that visitors could view the sea at close quarters, even in places where the shallowness of the sea meant that at low tide the sea was a long distance from the shore. The pier enabled pleasure and steamboats to operate at all states of the tide. The Victorians loved decoration, and their ornate embellishments are a delight, even when decaying and rusted. It pays to point the camera upwards or under the seats or over the edge to get more interesting shots of the ornamented detail or the method of construction. The rows of tree-like pillars have their own geometrical beauty, with the repeating patterns of the crossbars and braces, all holding each other firm against the onslaught of the waves. The brilliant colours of the iron in all stages of rust, from dark brown to bright orange, are set against the greens of the sea and seaweed. Gazing into the depths brings to mind the abundance of names that we have for the sea that surrounds us: the briny, the main, the blue, the deep, and the drink. The first pleasure pier was Margate Jetty at the beginning of the 19th century. Initially constructed of wooden piles. These soon succumbed to decay, and an iron version was opened in 1855, which was eventually destroyed by storm in 1978. It was located just behind the Stone Harbour Arm and took arrivals of tourists from London. At Gravesend, on the River Thames estuary, is the oldest remaining cast iron pier, which opened in 1834 and presently houses a restaurant. The longest pier in the world is at Southend in Essex, at 1 1/3 miles, 2,158 metres, and crosses the mudflats of the Thames estuary as it opens out to the sea. Waymarkers let the visitor know how far they have progressed. As you walk along, the view of the town of Southend just keeps shrinking, and you are left with the feeling that maybe it will disappear out of sight altogether. A very unsettling thought. Fortunately, there is a train that runs along the pier, although walking both ways is really part of the enjoyment and challenge, and you cannot claim victory over the sea from the comfort of a train seat. Piers lost their popularity when the expanding railway network supplanted steamboats as a means of transport, and many piers fell into disuse, disrepair, and eventually complete or partial destruction with the next winter storm. They have only survived where they are used and can generate income for their preservation. The pier at Eastbourne is in good repair and in full use, with amusements and shops along its length, and a separate area for anglers at the very end. At Hastings, the pier was for many years in a state of disrepair due to storm damage, and in October 2010, a fire destroyed 95% of the superstructure. It has been stabilised, and efforts are ongoing to find ways to fund its refurbishment and secure its future. The pier at Herne Bay in North Kent shows the last stage of pier life, with the pier neck having been destroyed by storm in 1978. This left the more solidly built landing stage at the far end, isolated at sea. Its miserable state of decay is overshadowed by the rows of bright white wind farm turbines a short distance behind it. The landward part was retained, and the pier pavilion constructed at its end, housing a sports centre, named by locals the Cowshed, as its chunky appearance was much less appealing than its predecessor. The pavilion has been demolished, and replacement attractions are under consideration. In 1899, divers found 2 pier signal cannons that were used to identify the pier to shipping in foggy conditions, and these are displayed at the foot of the nearby clock tower. Britain's piers are listed in detail on the website of the National Piers Society, founded in 1979 under the late Poet Laureate Sir John Betjeman, who had an ardent desire to preserve the best of Victorian architecture. He loved to write about our national obsession with our favourite places, including the delights and adventures of the seaside, and one of the trains on Southend Pier is named after him. Considering the amazing engineering achievements that are possible nowadays, saving and renewing piers is not a matter of ingenuity, but of finance and the willingness to invest. The old hand-coloured photos and postcards are all that we have left of many of these beautiful seafront buildings. I am always relieved to see piers retaining their original fittings and renovated in a sympathetic style. Other heritage buildings do not find themselves swept away in a fit of modernisation. They are carefully restored as historic monuments and examples of living history that we can still enjoy. Unlike historic houses, visitors to Piers do not expect to pay an admission fee, so maintenance needs to be financed from the business tenants in the shops and amusements on the pier itself. At Southend Pier, additional support is generated through their Adopt a Plank and Donate a Seat schemes, the latter being commonly seen in coastal resorts with inscriptions to loved ones on seafront benches. Part of the attraction of pleasure piers is that they are only found at the seaside, and so are inextricably tied up with memories of day trips or holidays spent in those locations. Even if you are not interested in its history, just seeing the pier brings back recollections of time spent on the beach, paddling in the sea, eating ice cream or sticky candy floss, digging your own moated castle in the sand, or bouncing flat pebbles off the waves. I wonder if an enterprise offering to build a balcony on your house, looking just like a piece of an existing pier, would find any takers amongst those who want to have a permanent souvenir of their visit. You could sit outside in your flip-flops and sun hat, admire the friendly sea serpent or dolphin designs, and recreate your day by the sea, without having to pack sandwiches or concern yourself about the weather forecast or the blusterings of the sea on a windy day. Lying back on your lounger, you would only see the sky and not neighbouring houses. A looping sound file of seagulls and crashing waves would provide the ambience, and a bag of winkles from the fishmonger would provide the appropriate aroma. But don't forget to continue visiting the real ones in order to encourage their preservation for future generations to enjoy.